Welcome to Rise to Lead. I'm glad that you're here for this conversation today. Today, I am my own guest, and I want to talk about something that rarely gets addressed honestly in leadership spaces, and that not a lot of my guests have touched on so far. And that's why I want to do it today. And this is going to be about the lives of successful leaders, accomplished professionals, successful business owners, successful leaders in corporate, outside of work. Or what happens when your life looks great on the outside of yourself in that case. So great from the outside, but feels strangely flat on the inside of you. This episode is about this because this has long been overdue. And if you're successful, if you've built something meaningful, like an impressive career, for example, or a great business, successful business, maybe even several, and you've achieved goals that once might have felt very far away, and maybe even many more goals than you ever thought or imagined that you could achieve, then this could be a topic for you because not everybody who is well accomplished and successful in their professional careers is automatically also living a fulfilling and joyful life, a free life. And that's what we want to talk about today. And because then often what pops up is that quiet question in the background: is this really it? And what happens is we get frustrated, and eventually that could even lead to burnout. And there's this feeling of emptiness or of a certain flatness to life. Like we're constantly caught up in routines and we don't really live as intentionally or as consciously in the present moment. And that doesn't always show up in a dramatic way. It doesn't show up as a crisis, right? It could become a crisis, but it doesn't initially show up as a crisis typically. It's more it usually shows in that subtle way, that late night kind of way, like when you lie in bed and think, oh my gosh, another day has gone by and it's not been really special. That's when we become honest with ourselves, when we are with ourselves, right? We leave the office and all of a sudden we're home by ourselves. Maybe if you have a family, maybe it's a bit different because then you come home to your family first or a partner, right? But there might still be those moments though. So this episode today is about leadership of your own life, leadership of yourself. Because even the best business leaders often forget to lead themselves, to lead their own lives. It's so easy to get caught up in that routine, in that autopilot of the day to day. And it's not surprising because that's how we grew up, right? We were not told to look at all areas of our lives and to make sure that we are happy, that we are joyful, that we feel free. And we get busy. We perform. We are so in this performance mode and goal setting and goal achieving mode that it becomes like an addiction. But it also stresses us out at times, and it could uh, feel like overwhelm at times, right? So, but even when it doesn't, even when it's going quite well and when everything seems to be functioning well, um, there's this feeling of autopilot, that there's no real meaning, or there's something missing anyway. There might be even lots of meaning in our work, but there's something missing for us personally. Because autopilot is efficient, and aren't we supposed to be efficient? But autopilot is not fully alive. So today I want to walk you through a few reflections that can gently move you from functioning to feeling alive again. And this is not, I'm not going to use any formulas, none of that. Just a few simple anchors you can come back to. And you can always, of course, re-listen to this later. So if something resonates in this, just let it land. If then something doesn't, simply let it pass. This is not about fixing yourself, and it's not about there's something wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just about noticing yourself so that you can gain awareness and then step into the transformation you would like to step in and add to your life what you would like to add. Maybe without giving up anything or much of what you already have, right? So, the first phase of this process that we're going to look into today is about recognition. Is this you? Let me paint a few scenes for you. Just notice what lands, right? No judging, no analyzing, really just noticing. Maybe your life looks good on paper. You have a solid career, impressive lifestyle, maybe, people respect you, you're capable, you're reliable, you're successful, all the good stuff. But when things go quiet for you, like at the end of a day, and when you're alone with yourself, it feels oddly flat all of a sudden because you're no longer in that go, go, go mode. And as I said earlier, it's really easy to get addicted to that. So then we become afraid of actually slowing down and being present with ourselves because we might discover something that's not so comfortable that we might want to change, right? But here, the first phase is really about that awareness only. So it's not about anything bad, it's just where you feel flat, where it doesn't feel fully alive for you. Or maybe you've made it by most standards. You've reached your goals. Uh, you've reached those goals that you as a younger self would have celebrated a lot because they're really important to you, or they seemed important, right? And yet sometimes this thought pops up of, is this really all there is? And of course it isn't. And you know that deep down. And that's not because your life is wrong in any way. It's not because you have done anything wrong. It's just because something in you knows that this cannot be the full picture of being alive. And it's time to bring something back or something new into your life that's currently missing for you in order for you to feel fully alive. Or maybe you have slowly adapted to a version of life that just works, that functions. It makes sense, it's responsible, it fits expectations, other people's, and maybe even those expectations of other people, they have become your own expectations. You've made them your own, but they are not complete for you. So if you were brutally honest with yourself, if you could choose again today, like if you could choose a completely new trajectory, would you choose differently for right now? I'm not talking about the past. That's all done and it's all good, right? So here's the key thing that I want you to hear. If any of this feels familiar, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. You're not ungrateful. You're not failing at life in any way. You're simply aware enough to notice the difference between a life that functions and a life that feels true and that feels good and that feels intense, but in a good way, right? In a pleasant way, even though it might not always be smooth. And this is not about throwing everything away. You don't have to throw your entire life out to create something new. It's about noticing whether you've outgrown a version of your life. Maybe it's your job, maybe it's your role, maybe it's your business, maybe it's not. Maybe it's something completely different. So, and you could have outgrown a version of yourself, but you cannot really outgrow yourself because that itself is just growth, right? But you could outgrow an identity. And I think that's the important word here, really, identity, right? We take on identities over time. So which identity might not serve you anymore? Sometimes growth doesn't look like change at first, like drastic change. Sometimes it just starts with this quiet inner honesty. So let's move on to the second piece of this. We want to look at how self-limitation and self-sacrifice are created and how they have been created in our particular case. Now, first of all, let's look at how people end up here in general, usually, right? Without blaming ourselves at all, because this doesn't happen overnight. It happens gradually, subtly, and often very reasonably, right? So at some point, many of us start choosing what is reasonable over what is true for us. There's no objective truth. I think you know that, right? But what is true for you? So we adapt to expectations. It starts early on in life with our parents, right? They want us to adapt to their expectations. So that's how we grow up. Our teachers. We adjust to what's practical too, even as adults. We prioritize what's responsible, but not necessarily responsible in the true sense of the word, which is responsibility is the ability to respond as we want to respond in an intentional way, but that responsible that is defined by others and what it needs to look like. And none of this is actually wrong. But here are a few questions I want you to sit with. When did you start choosing what made sense over what felt true? When did you start adapting to others' expectations more than your own inner voice? What did you give up gradually without consciously deciding to give it up over time? Sometimes we don't even notice because it's not dramatic. It happens little by little. And was that maybe what you gave up? Was that maybe time for yourself? Was it your desires? Was it your curiosity? Was it your spontaneity? Was it parts of yourself? Hobbies? This is not about blaming your parents, your job, your boss, your partner, society, whoever it is. It's not about blaming anybody. I want to make this very clear because that never helps. It doesn't. Because apart from that, at some point you made that choice, right? So who is there to blame, even if you were not completely conscious of it? But this is about awareness for the most part. Because awareness is the moment where choice becomes possible again. It's only through awareness that we can create change and transformation. So let's talk about the third part here, which is desire. What do you actually want? When I talk about desire, I mean real desire, not what sounds good on paper, okay? Your true desire. If no one had an opinion about your life or no point of view, how would you actually want to live? If no one had expectations, what would that look like? If no one were judging, how would you actually want to live? There's this saying, dance as if nobody's watching, right? What about play as if nobody's watching? Play in your life. Now, of course, that can include work. Not saying no, of course. But ideally, we should have both. And of course, also, the more work feels like play, the more fun it is. But let's come back to this concept, right? So, not what you should want, not what looks impressive to the outside or what others think you should want or what you believe that others think you should want, any of those combinations. It's really about what do you secretly desire, long for right now? And here's an even more powerful question. How do you want to feel in your life day to day? More free, more joyful, more spacious, more energized, more at peace. I think a lot of people want more inner peace these days. Because in the end, it's really the thing we want itself. It's actually the feeling we believe the thing will give us. Now, I want to invite you to a short moment of reflection today. And if you're driving, keep your eyes open, of course, and just listen inwardly. But if you're somewhere safe and it feels safe to you, then close your eyes for a moment and take a slow breath and let your shoulders drop a little bit and just relax them. And take another deep breath. Inhale, exhale, all the way into your belly. And just ask yourself, what would feeling fully alive look like for me? Feeling fully alive. Have I felt fully alive lately? What would that look like for me? And please don't try to make it logical or sensical. And don't censor it. It doesn't have to always make sense, right? Notice images, sensations, memories, or longings that are coming up, anything, thoughts. See, judgment just limits us, so just allow yourself to feel this. As I said, this moment doesn't require any sense making at all, only honesty. Take another breath and just register what came up. All this inner knowing, it's not random, it's really something inside of you that wants to speak to you, right? So your desire isn't a problem, it's information. It's a signal pointing you toward what's meaningful for you. And if you had your eyes closed, by all means, open them whenever you're ready. Now let's talk about postponing yourself and your dreams and your desires. Because postponing yourself is a form of procrastination. Putting off your desires is a form of procrastination. And it's a form of disrespect toward yourself. And it's a very sneaky form of procrastination because it doesn't look like laziness. It looks like being responsible, like being reliable, like being there for everyone else, but not always for yourself. And when you keep postponing yourself, you're postponing self self-mastery. I'm going to say that again, okay? When you keep postponing yourself, you're postponing self-mastery. You're postponing your own expansion. You're postponing the life that wants to be lived through you. But we're expansive beings by nature. So on some level, you're telling yourself, I'm not that important right now. And that's a form of disrespect toward yourself. Not maybe in a very harsh way, but in a quiet, habitual way. And if you're constantly responding to what others want, you might be doing a great job at keeping others comfortable. But you won't be living your own desires. You won't be expanding, won't be living your own dreams. But we're here to create what we desire. We're here to live in expansion. But when most of your energy goes into managing expectations, meeting demands, and staying responsible toward the outer world, not yourself, then you deprive yourself of your own creation. You deprive yourself of what you actually came here to experience, of the best of life. So for many high achievers, the professional part of that desire is already built. You've already created impact, you've built success. But where's the other part of it? And maybe you also want to change something in your professional life. That's totally okay, right? I'm not saying you shouldn't. But also look at the other part of life or parts. Life is a holistic phenomenon. It belongs all together. It's not separate parts really, but that's how we compartmentalize it sometimes to conceptualize it, right? So what about the personal part, the aliveness part, the freedom part, also the aliveness part while working, by the way? All of that often gets neglected or postponed. And for some of you, as I said earlier, even the professional part may be ready for an update, which leads to the next honest question. Are you actually ready for what you say you want? Readiness, right? Are you ready for the version of you this requires, this living fully requires? Here's the part most people skip. It's easy to want something. It's different to be ready for the version of you that comes with it. So let me ask you gently, if you lived more in line with what you just felt, what you just sensed during the exercise we did, who would you need to become? What would you need to be more honest with yourself, more honest with others around you that you interact with? What would you need to stop tolerating? Where would you need to speak up more, to be firmer or set clearer boundaries? Who would you need to behave differently with? Which parts of your identity would no longer fit? And who in your life might experience you differently then? So, which relationships would you potentially want or need to tweak, to modify? And this is not about drama. I'm not instigating you to create drama, right? It's about integrity. It's about being honest with yourself and with your needs. Desire without readiness often burns into frustration, and readiness without self-honesty turns into self-betrayal. So don't do that to yourself unless you want to. Now, let's talk about possibility and whether you actually believe this is possible for you. Here's another quiet but powerful question. Do you believe this kind of life is possible for you? Or do you believe that it's mainly just possible for others? Oftentimes, we don't feel blocked by a lack of discipline. We are blocked by what we believe is possible by our own limiting beliefs. And we get used to the familiar and we mistake the familiar for the limit. But that's not true. The familiar is not the limit, it's just what we know. Order sometimes feels safe, structure feels safe. It feels secure somehow. Routines feel predictable. And those things have their place. I'm not saying they should not exist, but it depends on how we use them, right? And predictability does not create aliveness. Possibility does. Uncertainty might seem uncomfortable, inconvenient sometimes, but it's also where new options live because uncertainty has unlimited possibilities. And one of my favorite questions is, and I ask this question literally every single morning as I get up, what else is possible for me today? What else is possible for me now? And this again is not about someday. Well, you can use it as a general question, right? What else is possible? It's already a great question, but also what else is possible now, today, not just someday in the future, not after everything is perfect. Now, we were taught early on to choose between right and wrong as if those two were the only options. We're taught in school that there's a right option and there's a wrong option or solution, right? And nothing else exists. But that's not true. That's a lie. That's just for you to fit into systems, to stop daydreaming about all the other options and possibilities and all the other dreams you might have had. And then later in life, we wonder why something feels missing. One day we wake up and we think, is this all? Because we're not here to just function well. We're not here to fit into a system. That's why we are all unique beings. You are here to create a life that feels alive to you. No one else can live your life. And you know that, but are we doing it? Right? We all know it. So, what's the way forward from here? Let me offer you a reframe. What if the problem isn't a lack of discipline, but actually misalignment? What if generic mindset tools that we've all seen cannot solve deeply personal life questions? What if they can actually make you more frustrated? Because we've tried so many, right? Many of us, we've tried this and that and this and that, and nothing has worked. But maybe there was just not the right one for you there. Or maybe it all also builds up one after another and it doesn't happen so immediately. It's different for everybody. But what if your version of a meaningful life cannot be built with a one size fits all method? Real change doesn't come from copying someone else's formula, from copying someone else's life. It comes from aligning your life with your own truth. And there is another way, there's a personalized way, and it's your way. And the most honest question here is, how committed are you to that? And I don't mean just in words. I mean in choices you make, in decisions you make. So let's make this practical. What's more important to you right now? Your current routine or feeling truly alive? Make a decision now. What's more important, control or possibility? Control is an illusion anyway, is a little hint. What's more important, staying where you are because it feels safe? And it's never safe anyway. Giving you some hints here, right? So Is it more important to stay safe because it feels safe, like to stay in a place that feels safe rather, or creating a life you can look back on and say, I didn't just function, I lived fully. And here's the part most people get wrong. You don't have to burn everything down. You don't have to quit your job tomorrow. You don't have to change your whole life overnight unless you want to. You can add aliveness to it. You can add freedom. You can add inner spaciousness. You can add joy. You can add more play to your life. You can make your work more playful on top of what already works for you, on top of your career, on top of your business. You may need to tweak a few things to make time for a few other things, right? But that's totally possible. Others have done it before you, so it is possible. I have done it. So the real question is, are you willing to stop postponing yourself? If this episode stirred something in you, if you felt seen, if you felt like this was you, or at least partly you, if you noticed a quiet yes somewhere inside, an internal nodding, then start today. Don't put this off anymore. Don't put yourself off anymore. And if you don't know where to start and feel like some guidance could help, then I invite you to take this out of your head and into a real conversation. And you can always book a life alignment call with a senior guide of my team. That's a real conversation about where you are, where you want to be, and what your next honest step could be. So just reach out to me at regina@transformyourperformance.com and we'll set that up for you. In any case, whether you want to do that or not, start today. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. If something in this episode resonated, don't rush past it. Let it start. Let it stay with you today. Let it start today. Let it influence one small choice at least, or maybe a big one. Because our autopilot doesn't switch off in big moments. It switches off in small, honest ones too. It's not just the big moments. It's practice, right? And you don't need to become someone else to feel fully alive. You just may want to let go of some of those identities that no longer serve you. And you need to stop abandoning the parts of you that already know what's true. Stop neglecting those parts of you. I'll talk to you again in the next episode where I'll again bring on an exceptional guest.